Manbij is a city in the Aleppo Governorate, Syria, 30 kilometers west of the Euphrates. In the 2004 census by the Central Bureau of Statistics, Manbij had a population of nearly 100,000. Its inhabitants are predominantly Sunni Muslims of Arab, Turkmen, Kurdish and Circassian ethnicity. Etymology. Coins struck at the city before Alexander's conquest record the Aramaean name of the city as Manbij. For the Assyrians it was known as Napigu. The place appears in Greek as Manbij, and Pliny tells us its Syrian name was Mabog. As a center of the worship of the Syrian goddess Artargatis, it became known to the Greeks as the Epsilon Rho Omicron Pi Omicron Lambda Iota Sigma city of the sanctuary, and finally as Epsilon Rho Alpha Pi Omicron Lambda Iota Sigma holy city. Cult of Artargatis. This worship of Artargatis was immortalized in Dadi, Syria, which has traditionally been attributed to Lucian of Samosata, who gave a full description of the religious cult of the shrine and the tank of sacred fish of Artargatis, of which Elian also relates marvels. According to the Dadi Syria, the worship was of a phallic character, votaries offering little male figures of wood and bronze. There were also huge phalli set up like obelisks before the temple, which were ceremoniously climbed once a year and decorated. The temple contained a holy chamber into which only priests were allowed to enter. A great bronze altar stood in front, set about with statues, and in the forecourt lived numerous sacred animals and birds used for sacrifice. Some 300 priests served the shrine, and there were numerous minor ministrants. The lake was the center of sacred festivities, and it was customary for votaries to swim out and decorate an altar standing in the middle of the water. Self-mutilation and other orgies went on in the temple precinct, and there was an elaborate ritual on entering the city and first visiting the shrine. History. Antiquity. The Aramaeans called the city Manbij. Manbij was part of the kingdom of Bitadini and was annexed by the Assyrians in 856 BC. The Assyrian king Shalmanes of III renamed it Leta Ashur and built a royal palace. The city was reconquered by the Assyrian king Tiglath-Pileser III in 738 BC. The sanctuary of Artargatis predate the Macedonian conquest, as it seems that the city was the center of a dynasty of Aramaean priest-kings ruling at the very end of the Achaemenid Empire. Two kings are known, Abiati and Abd-Hadad. The fate of Abd-Hadad is not known, but the city came firmly under the Macedonian Empire, and prospered under the rule of the Seleucids, who made it the chief station on the main road between Antioch and Seleucia on the Tigris. The temple was sacked by Crassus on his way to meet the Parthians. The coinage of the city begins in the 4th century BC with the coins of the priest-kings, followed by the Aramaic series of the Macedonian and Seleucid monarchs. They show Artargatis either as a bust with mural crown or as riding on a lion. She continues to supply the chief type even during Imperial Roman times, being generally shown seated with the tympanum in her hand. Other coins substitute the legend Theta Epsilon Sigma Sigma Upsilon Rho Iota Alpha Sigma Epsilon Rho Omicron Pi Omicron Lambda Iota Tau Nu within a wreath. In the 3rd century, the city was the capital of Euphratensis province and one of the great cities of Syria. Procopius called it the greatest in that part of the world. It was, however, in ruinous state when Julian gathered his troops there before marching to his defeat and death in Mesopotamia. Sassanid Emperor Khosrau I held it to ransom after Byzantine Emperor Justinian I had failed to defend it. Middle Ages. The Abbasid Caliph Harun al-Rashid restored Manbij at the end of the 8th century, making it the capital of Al-Awazim. Afterward, the city became a point of contention between the Byzantines, Arabs and Turkic groups. The Arab chieftain Saleh ibn Mirdas captured it circa 1022, making Manbij, along with Bailis and al-Rabah, the foundation of his future Mirdasid Emirate. At the time, Manbij was one of the most important fortresses in northern Syria. In 1068, the Byzantine Emperor Romanos Diogenes captured it, defeated the Mirdasids and the Bedouin allies, killed the city's inhabitants and plundered the surrounding countryside. Romanos later withdrew due to a severe shortage of food and supplies. The Crusaders never captured Manbij during their 11th–12th century invasions of the Levant, but the Latin archbishopric of Hierapolis was re-established in the town of Juluk by 1134. By 1152, Juluk and Manbij were captured by the Zenids under Anwar ad-Din, who reconstructed and strengthened the city's fortress. The Ayyubid Sultan, Saladin, conquered it from its Zengid lord, Qutb ad-Din Inal, in 1175. In 1260, the Mongols under Hulagu destroyed Ayyubid Manbij, which was consequently abandoned by its then Turkmen inhabitants. Modern era. The remains of ancient Manbij are extensive, but almost wholly of late date, as is to be expected in the case of a city which survived into Muslim times. The walls were built by the Arabs, and no ruins of the Great Temple survive. The most noteworthy relic of antiquity is the Sacred Lake, on two sides of which can still be seen stepped quays and water stairs. The first modern Western account of the site is in Henry Maundrell's Journey from Aleppo to Jerusalem, 1699. Under the Ottoman Empire, Manbij was a Khazar of the Sanjakan Vilayet of Aleppo. In 1879, after the Russo-Turkish War, a colony of Circassians from Vidam was planted in the ruins, from which many antiquities were excavated and sold in bazaars of Aleppo and Aintab. As of 1911, its 1,500 inhabitants were all Circassians. Syrian civil war. Prior to and in the early years of the Syrian civil war, Manbij had an ethnically diverse population of Arab, Kurdish and Circassian Sunni Muslims, many of whom followed the Naqshbandi Sufi order. The city's socio-political life was dominated by its main tribes. Tribal leaders served as the mediators and arbiters of major disputes in Manbij, while the state's security forces largely dealt with petty offenses. The city was relatively liberal compared to other Sunni Muslim majority cities in the countryside of Aleppo. During the civil war on 20 July 2012, Manbij fell to local rebel forces who thereafter administered the city. In December, there was an election to appoint a local council. In January 2014, forces from the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant took over the city after ousting the rebels. The city has since become a hub for trading in looted artifacts and archaeological digging equipment. In June 2016, the SDF launched an offensive to capture Manbij, and by June 8 had fully encircled the city. On 12 August, the SDF had established full control over Manbij after a two-month battle. On 19 August 2016, Manbij Military Council issued a written statement announcing it had taken over the security of Manbij city centre and villages from Syrian Democratic Forces. Ecclesiastical history. Lequin names 10 bishops of Hierapolis. Among the best known are Alexander of Hierapolis, an ardent advocate of Nestorianism who died in exile in Egypt, Philoxenus of Manbij, a famous Miaphysite scholar, and Stephen of Hierapolis, author of a life of St. Golindouch.
In the 6th century, the metropolitan see had 9 suffragan bishoprics. Chabot mentions 13 Jacobite archbishops from the 9th to the 12th century. One Latin bishop, Franco, in 1136, is known. Climate. Manbij has a hot summer Mediterranean climate with influences of a continental climate during winter, with hot dry summers and cool wet and occasionally snowy winters. The average high temperature in January is 7.8 degrees Celsius and the average high temperature in August is 38.1 degrees Celsius. The snow falls usually in January, February or December. Transportation. Manbij is served by 2 major roads, Route M4 and Route 216. There is no airport near Manbij, the nearest is in Aleppo.